It was not very surprising that the Indiana Fever went down to the Minnesota Lynx, but this game ended up getting quite physical with some elbows to the face.
Fans were astounded by what they witnessed. Everyone was furious after Lexie Hull took a shot that was so filthy. And it all took place immediately following the drama involving Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark. Fans of the Indiana Fever are tired. Players are left perplexed. As usual, the league remained silent. Let's examine what actually transpired last night.
On hold there, but then that is a technical.
That is a technical. Dead ball, contact technical.
Do you believe Caitlin Clark and her colleagues are adequately protected by the WNBA, or are they left in the dark? Tell me in the comments section. This wasn't just another hard game, so let's establish the scene. It was Indiana versus Minnesota. Additionally, it seemed more like a fight night special than basketball. Because of how precariously the Fever season has been going, fans were already apprehensive. Due to Caitlin Clark's injury, the squad is having trouble finding a rhythm. You knew something crazy was going to happen when you added Sophie Cunningham's reputation for stirring things up. However, no one anticipated that Lexie Hull would be the one to take a direct elbow to the face.
On hold there, but then that is a technical.
That is a technical. Dead ball, contact technical.
The replays made the play appear much worse than it did in real time. You could see Aaliyah Boston's look, that oh no reaction that basically told you how brutal it was. Furthermore, let's face it, it wasn't an awful accident. Kayla McBride's elbow appeared deliberate. Online fans quickly criticized it, claiming it was just another instance of the Fever being pummeled while league officials and referees did nothing. When I say that fans were furious, I mean that they were exploding on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, accusing it of being another attack in plain daylight.
Non-stop complaining about the officiating. There was a whistle here, a whistle there for every little thing. But I have to say, there were some elbows to the face that just were quite uncalled for, and it created kind of a contentious situation between the two teams. First, it was Napheesa Collier who elbowed Natasha Howard in the face, who fell flat on the floor. You could tell she was very upset, walked up to the referee, arguing with him, Napheesa Collier that is. And just a few minutes later, at an attempt to grab a rebound, Lexie Hull went up, Kayla McBride went up, and Kayla McBride, I don't know if she was just frustrated or something, but she ended up throwing an elbow. So right here you see Lexie going for the ball. She does kind of reach in right there. Oh, it obviously looks like Kayla McBride is frustrated. Lexie falls to the ground. Look at Aaliyah Boston's reaction. They're completely shocked.
Let's keep this in mind before someone rushes to defend the league or claim that basketball is only a physical sport. This season, Indiana athletes have been the victim of harassment before. Caitlin Clark has sustained multiple knockdowns. Sophie Cunningham has been involved in conflicts. And now Lexie Hull receives a lot of criticism. When do we acknowledge that there is a problem and stop acting like these are merely basketball plays? Because, in my opinion, the WNBA is beginning to appear to be a company that has no authority over its players and has no desire to safeguard its top players. Consider it. The face should be Caitlin Clark of the league. She is largely responsible for bringing the WNBA into the mainstream of sports discourse, selling out arenas, and increasing TV ratings. What is the compensation for that, though? The commissioner is hiding as if it were no problem. The referees are swallowing their whistles, and the opponents are making cheap shots. While the most marketable player in decades gets smashed around like it's open season, Cathy Engelbert has remained invisible. And it's no longer just Caitlin. Currently, strays are being caught by her teammates, including Lexie Hull. Let's go back to how the actual game played out. Both figuratively and practically, Minnesota came out firing. Napheesa Collier appeared unstoppable after dropping almost 30 points. Kelsey Mitchell made an effort to keep Indiana in it with 26 of her own, but you're not winning much when you're without Caitlin Clark and your point guard position is essentially a revolving door of who's available tonight. By the time the elbow to Hull occurred, it felt like the breaking point, and the Fever appeared outmatched and out-hustled. Where is the battle taking place? Since Indiana players appear to have mastered one skill, standing about looking shocked. Where's the push? Lexie is elbowed. She's in a bad mood. Her teammates were staring at her as if someone had ruined their food.
Doesn't go, and now it's McBride getting pulled.
Earlier Boston, what the?
Where is the battle taking place? Where is the resistance? Is there a teammate who is speaking up and saying no today? You get silence instead. Hands on hips, perhaps. That's all. They seem to have been coached to never respond, which makes sense given that the villain is always portrayed whenever someone does react. Think Sophie Cunningham attempting to become physical. The attackers, meanwhile, leave as if nothing had occurred. Thus, the topic of discussion has changed. It's not simply about the fever going away or Lexie Hull's injuries. It has to do with the WNBA's culture. Why does this continue to occur? What causes the stars being singled out? And why does the league appear to be more concerned with posting TikTok dances than with player safety? Can you imagine the outcry if this had been the NBA? The league management would have issued 3 statements, cut half of the roster, and suspended the referees before the game if either Luka Doncic or Stephen Curry had been elbowed in that manner. However, the WNBA remains silent. Things are going as usual, and let's not pretend that Indiana has never been in this situation. Rewind a few weeks. Caitlin Clark is knocked around, shoved, and had her hips checked. Sophie Cunningham, the only player on Indiana who appears willing to play with, is receiving criticism for just being Sophie. A benefit. Lexie Hull is then assaulted. The same question is eventually being asked by fans. Where is the defense? Because it falls on the teammates if the officials don't intervene and the league doesn't speak up, and it appears that the Fever would prefer to send a courteous email than stand up for one another. It's embarrassing. The word is embarrassing. Boston is meant to be the enforcer and the anchor. She should be the one to establish the tone, yet all she's doing is posting the astonished face meme. That could be effective on Instagram, but it is ineffective in court. Because Indiana currently appears soft. Teams like Minnesota, Chicago, and even Phoenix believe they can get away with throwing elbows because of this. No one is afraid of reprisals. Not at all. To be fair, the players aren't solely to blame. Coaching is important. To be honest, the coaching staff of the Fever has been completely incompetent in these circumstances. Unless someone like Christie Sides occasionally displays fire, you seldom see emotion from the sidelines. They frequently act as though they are playing chess while their players are being physically assaulted. In contrast, NBA coaches would have rushed the floor, been disqualified, and ensured their squad know they had backup. It appears as though Indiana's bench is awaiting a reservation for dinner. Let's return to the primary plot point, though. An assault on Lexie Hull. There was more than one dirty play in this. This served as a metaphor for Indiana's decline. They are now losing players one by one, are in 8th place, and are fighting for a spot in the playoffs. Would it still be worthwhile, even if Caitlin Clark returned? If you want to sneak into the playoffs and lose in the first round, are you willing to take on additional injuries? Or do you end it, declare this season over, and start over the following year? By the way, opinions among fans are divided on it. Some argue that since every game adds to experience, Clark ought to return. Others contend that she ought to sit out as it is obvious that the league will not defend her. To be honest, there are valid arguments on both sides. However, I was more inclined to protect Caitlin after witnessing what had happened to Hull. It makes no sense to place her in a league that refers to it as defense and treats her like a punching bag. Remember that this is about more than one team. This relates to the league's reputation. The WNBA is looking for expansion, fans, and television partnerships. However, how can you develop while your celebrities are being attacked on national television? Who wants to watch Sophie Cunningham, Caitlin Clark, or Lexie Hull end up on the floor during every game?
Basketball isn't that.
It's a circus. And casual spectators leave a circus unless there are clowns. Are humorous, but the WNBA isn't at the moment. It's pitiful. Since Kayla McBride isn't just some benchwarmer, let's now discuss her personally. She has served in the military. She is more knowledgeable. She has enough experience in this league to know the difference between dirty play and physical play. It was not a defensive elbow. That was annoyance. That was a message sent. Furthermore, the The fact that she left without facing any significant repercussions demonstrates just how flawed the system is. Indeed, I can already hear the justifications. It's only a component of the game, I see. Lexie Hull must become more resilient. Indiana needs to quit crying. But that's loser talk, let's face it. Tough defense and careless cheap shots are two different things. The game is exciting because of the former. The latter causes viewers to wonder why they are watching. Additionally, the WNBA currently controls far too much of the latter. So here we are. A more member of the Indiana Fever was assaulted. Another game lost. The league responded in silence once more. Repeat after rinsing. Fans have had enough. To be honest, I don't hold them responsible. It's ugly, but the Fever might manage one more victory against Chicago. It feels like a catastrophe this season. And things won't get better anytime soon unless someone in that locker room gets a backbone. This is the section that truly enrages fans. The double standard. Caitlin Clark is whistled when she even breathes close to a defender. Sophie Cunningham is labeled the villain of the league when she knocks into someone. Crickets, however, when Kayla McBride delivers an elbow that might be included in a UFC highlight. There was only a nervous laugh and a brief shift in topic from the commentators, the league administration, and the referees. Depending on their status or box-checking privileges, some players seem to receive free passes. Fans haven't let this one go, so let's talk about the teammates once more. The Heat, while watching Hull get, seemed as though they were anticipating a Jumbotron repeat. Feeble. Utterly feeble. Punches are not necessary. Act like you care that your friend just received a beating, even though no one is requesting a WWE cage match. Make it obvious that there is a line by stepping in, pushing someone back, and getting in their face. Rather, Indiana appears to be a group of spectators. And that's precisely the reason these occurrences continue. Opponents realize they can continue firing when no one retaliates. Think about Sophie Cunningham as an example. Love her or hate her, she's the one player that shows she won't take garbage from anyone. Do you recall the times when coaches had to restrain her? That is the appearance of fire. That's what it means to support your teammates. At the moment, it seems like Sophie is working alone while the rest of the crew checks out. Thus, Indiana desperately needs more of that energy. The unfortunate part is that this is having an equal negative impact on the Fever's present and future. Because Caitlin Clark had really high expectations going into this league and has already had to contend with a season full of cheap shots. Now, when Hull is harmed, Sophie is portrayed as the bad guy. What occurs if Clark determines that this setting isn't worthwhile? What is preventing the next major college star from considering a career in professional sports if the league continues to allow players to be targeted? The WNBA, I think it's gaining momentum, but if your stars are hurt, treated disrespectfully, or are simply tired, momentum is meaningless. The commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, comes next. And I must admit that at this point, her stillness is almost remarkable. She has a remarkable talent for avoiding accountability as if it were a sport. This year, how many Fever players have been affected? Caitlin Clark has been pushed to the ground how many times? How often has Sophie Cunningham been accused of displaying emotion in the media? Kathy continues to remain silent. Perhaps she's anticipating a marketing opportunity. Perhaps she hopes the dispute will go away.
Fans aren't stupid, though.
They observe what is taking place. They observe the partiality. They see the inaction. They're also sick of it. Let's take a moment to focus. The season in Indiana is essentially over. On the itinerary once more are Seattle, Phoenix, Chicago, and Minnesota. At best, they defeated Chicago. In the worst scenario, they lose out and end up feeling remorse. This is the worst part. What's the point? Even if Caitlin Clark returns for a game or two, you're putting her health at risk for a league that won't defend her, for a club that can't defend itself, and admirers who are already getting ready for the upcoming year. Sitting out, regrouping, and returning stronger is sometimes the best course of action. Critics will undoubtedly refer to that as soft. They will claim that Clark must return for Indiana to compete. Let's face it, though, this is no longer about competition. It's a matter of survival. Because Clark's hasty return is a surefire way to end things if Lexie Hull's elbow is any indication of what's to follow. And what do you know? Perhaps the Fever will have to learn their lesson the hard way. Perhaps they must reach their lowest point before they understand that you can't continue to be pushed around by teams.
The depressed.
The good news is that Indiana has talent. With anyone, Kelsey Mitchell can score. Boston is physically capable of controlling the pain. Clark is Clark, a once-in-a-generation shooter and playmaker, while Hall and Petty add vitality. However, if the culture remains poor, none of it counts. The Fever will continue to lose toughness, play, and muscle until someone outside says enough is enough. Additionally, supporters will continue to watch in exasperation as they wait for someone to act. The bottom line is as follows. The assault on Lexie Hull wasn't a one-off incident. It was the ideal representation of the Fever's whole campaign. Gentle answers, stars are left on the ground as rivals celebrate, and the league is not held accountable. Because they are aware that things don't have to be this way, fans are furious. Sophie has displayed some fire. Although they have witnessed brief displays of competitiveness, they are insufficient. Indiana must determine if they will ultimately push back or become the WNBA's punching bag. In the interim, anticipate more elbows, more cheap shots, and more top-level quiet. Because the WNBA is an expert at one thing. It's acting as though nothing occurred.
That's it, then.
Another Fever player went down on the floor one more night, and the
League.
To be honest, fans ought to be over it. Now, though, I would like your opinion. Is the WNBA solely to blame for this? Or do the Fever need to get tougher? Leave your comments below. For more, click like and subscribe.